Did you have like a specific like welcome phrase that you would tell people as they walked into the store?
Hi,
Great.
welcome. Thanks for coming in. That was about it. No, so I worked there's in the town where I lived growing up. After high school, I worked for a little while I was a college student, doing like a full-time college student, like just the associate's degree stuff where you're doing all your like prerequisites and general classes and stuff you have to do. I also worked part-time at a health food store, and it was actually a health food store that wasn't too far from where my family had lived when I graduated from high school. And I was aware of it, but it was like this was the early 2000s. So now our relationship to like health food stores is very different than it was back then. Back then you were definitely like more what people would call like crunchy or granola or tree hugger. If you went into a health food store, they were specialty stores. They weren't like there wasn't Whole Foods, there wasn't Sprouts, there wasn't like Trader Joe's, like any of these health food adjacent stores that are all readily available now. And it was definitely before like your just main grocery stores had a health food store aisle that carried a lot of similar things. If you were a person with celiac disease and needed to eat gluten-free, this was pretty much your only storefront to be able to purchase gluten-free items at the time.
Yeah.
Same with a lot of like organic foods and stuff like that. So this was a time when it was not as accessible to have health food stores. Not many people were as like aware or concerned about health. It wasn't as much in just like the general cultural ether as it is now. And so I was aware of it, and I was also like, haha, what a granola store, even though I definitely had granola tendencies. And I never had really considered working there just because also I was like, I don't know, because also this is at a time when I was fully aware that I was like fat and like fat does not equal healthy back then. And so I was like, I don't know that I would be a good representation for a health food store, and all this kind of stuff. So there were a lot of reasons why I'd written it off. But then my sister had a roommate who worked there. And my sister's roommate was nice and like I was friendly with her too. And she's like, well, Casey, I know that you're looking for a different job. They're hiring. And so I went, and it was a normal couple who was like who owned it and ran it. And then like so this was also a chance for me to go ahead and start confronting all these stereotypes I had about the kind of people and how woo-woo they would be. And they were like they had woo-woo tendencies like everyone does, but they were also just like normal people who like what like I had known as a normal person, which is just like, yeah, they have kids. They are just this is their job. They just because they supply all these things doesn't mean they believe in all these things or consume all these things, but they also know that this is the avenue for a lot of people who do, and they're tolerant, respectful of that. So it was like a great opportunity for me to start shifting some mental models that I had. But so I got the job, and I was like, well, great, that'll actually work out really. They said, we love hiring college students just because we have these like adult women and men who had been part of their like family organization for a really long time, been working there forever. And so it was great to have college students who could come like after school. And then that way, like they had people who could do the morning shift a lot easier, who had been there for years and were very knowledgeable about all this stuff. And then we would overlap just a little bit, but then they would go home and then we could stay there later because, we're young college kids. And so, anyway, I started working at this health food store and I liked it. It's a health food store, so it smells like, herbs when you go in.
Yeah.
Um, and then you also get all sorts of people. So, like, early 2000s conspiracy theorists would come in, and there was this one man who would always come in. And when he'd come in, that would be when I'd be like, I think I might need to like do some restocking in the fridge. Because again, I had resting talk to me face. And so if he ever cornered me, I'd have to like politely listen to him for 30 minutes while he talked about how the moon landing was faked and how, just all these other conspiracies that he believed in. And I was 20. And I was just like, okay, sir, like I don't have enough like life experience or interest in any of this. I'm
Yeah.
just going to politely believe you though, or at least politely be respectful until I can get called away. And so, and then there were people who, then there were also people who'd come in and think like, oh, my mom just got a cancer diagnosis. Will CoQ10 cure her? And I'd be like, no, but if you want it, it's over here. So like
Yeah.
there were like people who were very like all in on nutrition will heal everything. And
Yeah.
again, like that's where I would try to gently like point out, hey, so these are called supplements because they're supposed to supplement your health, not like cure everything.
Yeah,
But most people who came in did appreciate that. And we're like, hey, it's because I need a specialty food that only you carry. It's because it is easier for me to buy um, brewer's yeast or nutritional yeast in bulk because there was also not really a good place to get that at the time.
yeah,
And there were people who were vegan and vegetarian, and this was like one of their best outlets for all of that. Or people who were just already in a place where they were a lot more conscientious about what they were consuming.
yeah.
So that was my life. I got to learn a whole lot about like the different benefits. Well, at least like oh, this is always where you have to caveat like purported benefits of supplements that haven't been like FDA approved or have a lot of clinical studies around them. But I could tell you like, oh, if you're having a hard time falling asleep, maybe you need to try some valerian root. Um, that usually induces some sleepiness, and then some melatonin might help you stay into sleep a little bit better and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that was where I worked. But a lot of my coworkers, especially in the afternoon, were other like college aged kids.
Yeah.
Another big draw at this health food store was they had frozen yogurt
Mhm.
that and a frozen yogurt machine that had a lot of like probiotics. So, and this was also before like probiotics were really known and cool. So it was a frozen yogurt with probiotics. And so it was like, whoa. And we also had something called oat cream for vegan people, where it was ice cream made out of oats, like soaked oats. And then that got turned into ice cream. And this was also, we had one of those nut grinder machines so we can make you like some homemade nut butter or peanut butter. And this was before, again, grocery stores had them all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, those and so on Saturday mornings, if you were working, you had to clean the yogurt machine and then you got to like loop in new flavors. But a lot of people would come in for nothing other than the yogurt. One of the perks of the job is that we got to have one small yogurt every shift.
Nice.
And then also we would open up free samples of different things. So we got a free sample a lot of stuff. So there were like some of those little perks about everything. And then of course there's like an employee discount for if you wanted to buy a bag of no, I don't know, dried apricots yourself.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was fun. I'd leave work smelling very herby all the time. Like it would just seep into your clothes and your hair. And it
Yeah.
was one of those things that until you showered, you just smelled like it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I made some really good friends though while I worked there. Like I got a one friend, one girl who started working there. She and I became very dear friends. I became really good friends with a couple other people that worked there. And again, they were all like kind of like high school age kids. A lot of these kids had come from like the same like religious background I did. And so we kind of had that as a shared language, and we were all kind of had the same relationship too, that at the time, which is we were really trying to like follow the rules still and be into it. And we're figuring out life as early or young adults who also have these like religious beliefs and like spiritual feelings and stuff that we were still working out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's all to say, like we were just pretty good kids and we had a lot of fun. We loved being silly. They sold those. I don't know if you ever have seen those Choco Love chocolate bars or ever had one.
I haven't. No.
This is where I got hooked on them because they were like one of the first like more organic and more dark chocolatey kind of candy flavors. But their big hook is that they call themselves Choco Love and they will print like a love poem on the
Oh yeah, I've
inside
seen those
wrapper.
before. I just pulled them
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say they've been around for a long time, and that's where I like first I like got hooked on them there. But my favorite thing because I have always been like into like trying to like like prank people and not prank in like a mean way because I don't think pranks are funny when they're mean, but just like dumb ways where I would like get it I would buy one of those chocolate bars for for on my lunch break or something, and then I would take the poem and then I'd write like dear so and so love so and then I would put it in their work apron and it would be like so then that way like someone would come and be like why did you leave me this as a love note? Like, so I was like just doing stuff like that. There was like two people who had nothing to do with it, and me just leaving a love note pretending like it was from them. And of course, very quickly, everyone was like, Casey, because they like knew it was me. But I would just like, it was just dorky stuff like that that I like to do. So anyway, we all
Yeah.
became like really good friends.
Aw.
Um, but we were also at a point where I was finishing up my associate's degree and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And that was part of this stage in life where I was, where I just had so much anxiety and no words for it. I
Yeah.
didn't have a good sense of who I was. Um, Especially in like the church we grew up in, one of the things that could take a lot of decision making off the table pretty was if you got married young, but that wasn't going to happen for me. And it was like one of those things where it's like I wanted it to happen, but I didn't. Like I wasn't actually interested in being married, but I was interested in the whole cool, I don't have to make this decision part of my life.
Girl, same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
And so, and then I didn't have like, and this was also before I knew much about, like, I definitely didn't have ADHD on my radar. I
Yeah.
didn't realize how executive functioning or just your ability to like identify problems, come up with solutions, just break down what was going on, or even just emotional regulation to even identify and talk about how I was feeling in place. I
Yeah.
wasn't aware then that my parents, that was also one of their big challenges. And so getting information from them wasn't like it was super hard to get helpful direction from them about anything because they'd be like, well, I don't know, blah, 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 and like give you like 100 options that went nowhere. Like that ultimately just kind of trailed off until you're like, never mind, I'm not going to ask you for anything. And so I just didn't know. And then I had other friends who did really want to get married. And I was just like, well, good for you. I
Yeah.
didn't know though. But, and so like, I was just trying on these different identities of like, do I want to be the person who does get married young? But ultimately, my heart, I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Um, I really always loved learning, but then that meant I would have to go off to school by myself. And then I was very much afraid of like, I don't know, like I was still just so, had such a low sense of self and like a lot of self, like even worse self-esteem issues there, where I was just like needing validation from anyone because anyone else being able to provide any sort of definition for me felt like a relief at that time. I was just lacking a lot of guidance. I didn't know if it was okay for me to want the things that I wanted. I was definitely closeted about a lot of the things that I did truly like, but again, didn't feel the social safety to be able to like be open about even just the fact that I like different music than them or might have questions about things. And so, um, I was just very much at a point where I was honestly like just super frustrated and blocked. And I was, oh, let me look at the motion wheel. I would say I was feeling very jealous of people who knew what they wanted. I was also very critical of people who had any sort of like opinions about how to move forward because I was mad and I just was like, well, then I'm just going to try to belittle you and make you question yourself as much as I'm questioning myself right now about everything.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
like, I was inherently a kind person, but man, I could be such a little shit sometimes, like especially when like bitch mode got activated because of how insecure I felt.
Oh my.
And that's all to say. And then there was also just like parts of like just the sadness where I like had this grief that I couldn't quite define because I did feel like there were parts of me missing or that I was like denying, but I didn't know how
Yeah.
to integrate them. So there's just like a lot of like emotional turmoil. So that's me working at a health food store with all these thoughts that I'm like masking hard and all these feelings that I'm masking hard and so much self-doubt that I'm masking hard. And I want to like go learn more, but I'm not sure what degree I even want to pursue. I have a kind of a limited experience with the world and all the careers out there. You know, like my mom was a nurse, my dad worked in HVAC. Neither of those seemed very appealing to me. My oldest sister was a teacher, and I loved working with kids, but I knew I didn't want to be a teacher because I couldn't manage a whole classroom full of students. At one time, I was aware that I didn't know the term introverted, but I was aware that I needed a lot of alone time for recharging. And so sometimes even just the thought of having to be with too many people at once, I just got tired thinking about it and all this kind of stuff. So, everyone would always tell me like, oh, wow, you're so smart, you're so talented, you're so capable. So then I also felt like such a failure or I was letting them down by not knowing what I wanted to do because I could present as confident and self-assured very well, even though on the inside I was genuinely feeling none of that.
Yeah.
So, cut to two of my good friends that I made at the health food store were kind of just starting their college career. And I was at the end of my 2 years. At the time, this was just a 2 year college. And I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I knew all the things I wasn't happy with, but I didn't always know how to verbalize that to people. And so then sometimes it just come out in really stupid and ugly and misguided ways. And so one day we were all at the health food store, and I wasn't alerted ahead of time that two of my friends who were just starting at the college would be leaving because they had some sort of like orientation activity or like it was like or a freshman night or something. There was like some sort of activity, and they had asked and gotten it cleared to go do that. And and in this moment, I felt so angry, but also just like so abandoned and alone that I was like so mad at them because I was like, how dare you guys just think that it's okay to leave me after all the good things that I've done for our friendship? And you're going to leave me here to work alone and close up this stupid store with this one other guy who was also a very lovely person that I worked with. So I don't want to make it seem like that I was like mad about that. But I felt like I was being left behind in such a hardcore way. And
Yeah.
I was literally being left behind. And so in my friend's perspective, I'm sure they were like, yes, we are going to this college activity, much like the college activities you too have gone to in our time working here. But in my head, I was like beyond that. Like you are leaving behind me behind in life. And so that was the point of view I was coming from. They're probably coming from the point of view of like, yeah, we're about to start school. We're going to go do an activity. This is what we're doing. You've done this too. And I had a little freak out. And I was just like, we didn't even get your yogurt yet. And they were like, yeah, I didn't want one today. And I was like, you've got to take your yogurt. You like your yogurt every day. You better just get your yogurt and go. And all this. And I started turning into like the biggest weirdo having a hissy fit about yogurt and demanding that my friend eat yogurt. And he's like, I don't want it. And I was like, oh, yeah, you always like this one. I'm going to make you this one. And then I made him that. And then I handed it to him. He's like, Casey, I don't want this. And I was like, fine, whatever. And then I walked off and I felt so stupid, like so genuinely stupid, because
Oh,
honestly, I was being very dumb at that moment. I was being very like petulant. I was throwing a tantrum. I was 20. It wasn't a cute look. I was not happy at my friends being able to live their life because I was stuck in my own. And I was very embarrassed and humiliated, only I wasn't aware that that's what I was until later. And so my friends like looked at each other and just kind of left. And then I put the yogurt in the freezer in like the back little freezer room. And then at the end of the day, like cut to me like sadly eating it by myself because of it. And then
oh,
that's when the humiliation set in. And that's when the embarrassment set in. And that's when I was like, I don't know how I'm ever going to show my face around my friends again. I don't know how I can ever show my face in front of in this health food store again. The guy that I was closing the store with, like, was aware of what happened. But he was nice and didn't say anything. But I was just like, oh gosh. And like, that's when like the embarrassment of everything set in.
uh,
Um, and I also didn't really have like an idea of how to like address a situation like that with anyone because I didn't really have any modeling in my family about how to handle conflict in like a healthy way.
or
Um,
repair. How,
yeah.
like, how do you repair that, you know?
Yeah. So I had no idea how to like have a repair conversation at all, which is what I knew I needed to do, but I
Yeah.
had no idea how to do it. And I was like okay with handling conflict if it involved me apologizing to someone, but I didn't. But only if I like really knew what I was apologizing for and before I showed any like very like forbidden or undesirable or bad emotion. And I'd already like crossed the line there because I full on just like looked like a Looney Tunes person being like, eat your yogurt. He was like, I just want to go to an activity. Anyway, luckily, one of my friends was very kind, and the next time she saw me, she just was like, Casey, are you okay?
Oh,
And I was just like, and then I started crying, and I was like, no. And then I was like, and then I just feel so dumb. I know. She's like, I know it's embarrassing when that stuff happens. I've done it too. And so I was so fortunate in this moment to have a friend who knew how to have a repair conversation because I didn't, and I felt so dumb.
yeah.
And it would have been a really easy time for me just to like, in an effort to save face, just double down on it, do something weird, like start pulling
Uh,
away from my friends, even though I still liked them.
yeah.
But luckily, my friend, I was very fortunate that she could like just be like, "Are you okay?" And it was also a nice reminder to be like, "Yeah, you have been a good friend to them, and they've been good friends to you because just like you've listened to them as they've been trying to figure things out, they're here for you." So it also helped me get out of that victim narrative that I was like doing in my head, where I'm like, "I just do everything for them, and no one does anything for me." That was also objectively not true. So anyway, that was one story about me having a fit about yogurt at a health food store, trying to force feed it to my friend so he wouldn't go to a college party.
I
That
think
wasn't even a college party, just like a welcome party at the college. Mm.
what I love about that though is that I think it shows you to where like it just shows that you wanted so badly to be able to figure out like this internal turmoil that you were feeling and you weren't sure how, but you
Mhm.
were open to when a friend or an acquaintance or someone in your life was like bringing some sort of like clarity about like what was happening and how to handle that situation. Like kudos to you for like being open to that because I know sometimes it could be so hard, like the embarrassment and the shame and the guilt could be so uh like so debilitating that sometimes it's easier to just pretend double down on pretending it didn't happen and the gaslighting can be very real or the just the not great handling of that like the opposite of repair it just furthers the
Further destruction.
yeah there you go yeah just creates more construction destruction and chaos. How did you talk to your friend afterwards? Like, did you talk to the guy?
I think I did. And again, no, I mean I did. So first, thankfully, my one friend, she was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And then I was able to like process that initial part. So
Yeah.
then after that, and like also honestly, her just acknowledging that it was embarrassing, I did feel, all I knew was I felt stupid, but I still didn't necessarily have the word embarrassed, is what I was really feeling. Because again, my interoception wasn't great either.
Yeah.
And so it was also really helpful for her to point out that that was an embarrassing feeling because it 100% was. And I just didn't really clock it as embarrassed.
Yeah.
And so I was really grateful. And that helped me kind of, again, kind of put everything into on context a little bit better. And so then I was able to sheepishly go have a conversation. And he was just like, that's fine.
Isn't it so great when you like are able to have secure attachments with people or just like be in a friendship with people who have a better sense of self and like better self-esteem and like better
Mhm.
emotional regulation skills? Because I have had several friends like that throughout my life where it just grounds you. It just
Yeah. Yeah, I was very fortunate, and I'm sure in my head, especially because of just who I was and where I was at, I was like, I don't deserve any of this kindness. But I
yeah,
received it and I was really grateful. And I mean, at the time, like, I mean, now I can appreciate, yeah, that's just part of the give and take of like having people in your life is you're all human. And sometimes you show the like less appealing sides of being human
yeah,
as a person who is like figuring things out or dysregulated or it's just going having a moment of meltdown or whatever. And then to have people who care about you who can just be like, yeah, it's fine and help you move on is really great. And so, yeah, I was very fortunate that even though I had, a 20-year-old tantrum that involved trying to force feed yogurt to someone, they were both like very forgiving people and kind about it. And I was able to continue stocking shelves with them,
oh,
and it not be like a horrible thing. So,
that's great.
thank you.
I love it. How do you feel like you are with your interoception and like being able to label emotions as you're feeling them and have a better sense of like what's happening in the moment compared to 20-year-old Casey?
Now that I like have tried to let myself feel feelings,
Yeah,
that has been one of the biggest things is I recognize that like, because back then I very much was thinking it was either you were in my family, you could either be neutral or happy, but all the other feelings you just had to like kind of cordon yourself off and have them on your own. It was okay for adults to like yell or have feelings, but there wasn't really a lot of space for us kids to have feelings besides just like neutral or happy as a group. And so it was something that I had to learn. So I continued that pattern where I was like, I also, if I show these feelings that are bad feelings, people are not going to want to be around me. So there was so much in my life, even up to that point, of I have to curate how I present to people. I mean, like, obviously, nowadays, social media makes it really easy for us to think about how we're curating our lives. But I would argue that probably unless you're coming from a really healthy place, you probably are always, but even if you are to some degree curating who you are in public and your
yeah,
public persona. And so I definitely had like a more probably highly curated presentation than other people did, because of just the state of regulation I was in. And I didn't know how to feel feelings. I didn't know feelings were really allowed.
Mhm.
I thought having negative feelings or bad feelings meant I was a bad person.
Yeah.
And so now that as an adult, and as someone who, has done a lot of therapy and has done a lot of work around learning more about interoception and regulation and has done color mending and stuff like that, where I can appreciate all feelings are feelings. Feelings are just feelings.
Yeah.
Feelings are information. They're
Yeah.
not good or bad. They're just trying to give you a readout of what's happening. Once I started to like try to be more reflexive about what is this feeling trying to tell me, it
Mhm.
got a lot easier just to allow those feelings to exist in my body. And then over the last several years, especially, I've gotten better at in real time with people who I feel safe with, I will tell them the feeling I'm having in real time.
Yeah.
It's still something that like I'm having to, there are still moments like in my family, I don't always feel like I can necessarily do that.
Yeah.
But with most everyone, I really do tell them in real time, like, oh, that really frustrates me, or oh man,
Yeah.
can we, like, even just stuff like where I'm like, can we go to a different room? The light in here is really bothering me. Like, just being able to
Yeah.
say stuff like that. Or
Yeah.
if we don't stop and give myself a chance to eat something, I'm gonna not have energy to think through this. And we just pause so we can all eat or whatever. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
not really, like, even just the ability to be like, oh, that really is disappointing, or I really wish that was different. So I'm not always necessarily able to give like an emotion word, but I'm actually able to convey the emotional experience I'm having.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's in a more professional way, like if it's at work where I'm like, well, I really wish that
Yeah.
wasn't the policy.
Yeah.
So that they
Yeah.
can know that there is like some disappointment there, but I'm not going to be like, I'm disappointed because,
Yeah.
like professionally, that might not be the best one. But like around my friends, I feel a lot better about and a lot more open to just describing how I'm feeling in real time.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. And I love what you pointed out about like how even if you're just are able to articulate, even if you don't have the feeling word, but you're able to like have the self-awareness to say, hey, I need some food, or we need a timeout, or hey, I'm feeling like pretty overstimulated. Um,
yeah,
like just that in and of itself is like huge. It's not a skill that not a lot of people have, but
it's,
especially
it's one that I came later to in life, but I'm really glad
same.
I'm still developing it. Yeah.
Same. I know it's really freeing and it's so nice. Like I think that was one of the things that I was bumping up against too, or had to work a lot on is like if I articulate my needs, like that means that I'm needy and like taking away from like what other people need or just like requiring them to like throw me a bone or do me a favor. But in reality, it's just like when you're able to communicate those things, everything else is so much better. Um,
Yeah.
like, and people are just like genuinely like, hey, like if that's what you need, like let's do it. Like if it's gonna improve the mood of the experience or just like being together or the relationship or make it to where you'll have like a more fun time, then like people are genuinely like, hell yeah, let's do that.
I remember one turning point for me. I had just started therapy and I recognized that I wanted to be able to be able to feel things and not bury feelings as much.
Yeah,
And I was working at like a daycare at the time. And this is also when I was like, at this point, I was working on a bachelor's degree. So I was working part-time at a daycare and I'd had plenty of experience with children up to this point in my life too. And I was like I think I was in a room with 3-year-olds and it was time to clean up the Play-Doh because it was like time for lunch or something like that.
yeah,
And I remember, and this is also why have always found children very refreshing to be around because
yeah,
especially the younger they are before they like let all those filters of how they feel like they have to mask and present come
yeah.
in. It's just like refreshing to be like, yeah, I can handle all of that. And it's not a big deal to realize because it's also just a good reminder to me of like, yeah, it is upsetting or it is fine. And also you can be upset and I can be fine at the same time.
Oh,
And I
100%.
think, and so I just remember there's this little girl, she's 3, she didn't want to clean up the Play-Doh. We had given them like the warning, like, hey, timer's gonna go off in 2 minutes, and then we're gonna put away Play-Doh, and it'll be time for lunch or whatever. And so the timer goes off. All of us start singing the cleanup song. All of us are cleaning up. She's just really into the Play-Doh, doesn't want to clean up. And now all of a sudden, so I had to like tap her on the shoulder and I said, hey, it's time to clean up. We're getting ready for lunch. Let's put that away. And she just had like a little strip of like Play-Doh and a cookie cutter left.
Yeah,
And then she looked up and she was just like, no. And I said, I know you are having fun doing that. It's time to clean up. And then she saw the basket full of then she like looked around and saw that really all the Play-Doh was gone. All the basket of cut cookie cutters and stuff was in front of her and she went and like smacked the basket and it went flying. And I just was like, of course, like in that moment, was very calm. But like just the fact that she was so fully, I am angry and I need you to know how angry I am, and was so in the moment and living with it.
Yeah.
In that moment, I was like, gosh, I wish I could be you. Like the fact that she could feel it and express it. I was so jealous of this 3-year-old just living within her little body and her feelings and responding accordingly.
Yeah.
And so like she says no, and then I just kind of stand there. And then I said, I'll start cleaning them up. And then she starts crying. And she's like, but I wanted to get the crumbs. And it turns out she just liked to be the one who used her Play-Doh to get the Play-Doh crumbs to get into the
Oh,
jar. So I was like, oh, well, now there are Play-Doh crumbs on the table from hitting the basket. Why don't you get those while I clean up the cookie cutters? And then we're
oh,
good. But yeah, that was a moment that really like has obviously stuck with me because like I
yeah,
said, in that moment, that's where I was like, that's what I want to be. Like obviously I don't necessarily want to, I wish that we could chuck a Play-Doh basket when we're
yeah,
like mad,
yeah,
but like the adult version of that where I can let people know, no, this is bothering me, or I'm upset about this, or I
yeah,
actually know I'm disappointed that this is how we've
yeah,
decided to do it, or like whatever. I really
yeah,
disagree with this, and just wanting to be able to let people know in real time how I was
yeah.
experiencing something. So anyway,
How liberating.
yeah.
It's
I
true.
got there eventually.
You did.
Yeah. I just had the tantrum first and then I had the emotions coming later, but
Everything is step by step, a work in progress.
it's so
Live
true.
and learn.
Honestly, it's still a work in progress. I'm
Yeah,
still getting better at
same.
it. Yeah.
Oh, I could tell that I was talking to a client a few weeks ago, and I was like, I'm fully expecting when I'm 90 to like still be working through this stuff. And she's like, by that point, I would hope you would be able to let it go. And I was like, no, like my environment's going to change, like the people that I am around are going to change, like who knows what the world will be like politically, like environmentally, like socially, like what any of that will look like. So yeah, I'm like fully expecting for me to like be working through some of these mental models that happened when I was like 10 or like 5 at the when I'm 90, because that's just the way life is.
One thing when something's alive, it's going to change and
Yeah.
it's a dynamic thing and you have to expect that you will have to be dynamic with it too.
Yeah, 100%. Hopefully by then we'll get together with our glasses, our big glasses and our walkers and just like
Mhm. Yeah.
making Jello and
It
stuff.
won't be color mending, it'll be like color knitting or something like that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for sharing, Casey.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.